In the late 1950s, America gets a punch to the gut. The Soviet Union sends up the first satellite. Soon talks of landing a man on the moon arose between the Soviets and the Americans. President Kennedy knew how vital it would be to put a man on the moon. On May 25, 1961, he gave a speech that forever changed the space program and history. President Kennedy said, "I believe that this nation should commit itself before the decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth." So, with that being said, now starts the Apollo program. First, I will be talking about the Apollo 1, Apollo 11, and Apollo 13. First, Apollo 1 was supposed to put put the first command service module into space to test it out and make sure it worked. But before it could ever launch, there would be a fire on the launch pad. Roger Chaffee, Gus Grissom, and Ed White would perish because of that fire. Because of the hatch to the capsule opened inward and prevented the crew from getting out. So, after the fire and lessons learned from the fire, the Apollo program was delayed for about a year due to redesigns of the capsule door and the locking mechanism to allow for escape procedures and quick opening of the door if needed in the event that there was ever an emergency. Second, the Apollo 11, the moon landing. According to NASA, the primary objective was to be the first humans to land on the moon and return them safely to the Earth. It took about 8 days and 240,000 miles, but we finally made it. Neil Armstrong would be the first man to land on the moon. He gave the famous line of "Tranquility Base here, the Eagle has landed." And when he came out of the lunar module, he said that there's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. And his partner Buzz Aldrin would also be the second man to step foot on the moon. Lastly, the Apollo 13 disaster. The mission was supposed to land in the far area of the moon. At about 55 hours into the flight, an oxygen bottle on the service module exploded, causing the crew to lose electricity, light, and power. The crew would go around the moon and do a series of rocket burns to come back. They eventually did come back around and splashed down into the Pacific. Apollo 13 was called a successful failure because the oxygen bottle did explode and the crew nearly died because of it, but successful because Mission Control was able to save the crew and bring them home safely. Future missions like Apollo 18, 19, and 20 would be cut due to budget and would be used later to transport astronauts to and from America's first space station, Skylab. So, the Apollo program encompassed many successes and failures. There were fires, explosions, fear, and doubt. America, however, never lost sight of the goal, putting man on the moon. The Apollo program started to pave the way for future missions. It proved that we could live and work in space, Skylab. On May 25, 1961, Kennedy urged Congress to put man on the moon. Kennedy never lived to see his dream realized. However, in July of 1969, Neil Armstrong stepped foot on the moon, fulfilling Kennedy's dream and forever changing history.